Hi everyone, this is Val from Valia Craft Studio, and today I'm going to show you how I bind my hybrid journals. Now the hybrid journal has 3 signatures. The middle one is held in with elastic, and the first and the third one are sewn in. So I have here a cover that I've got ready to do, and I've got my 3 signatures. I'll just put those aside for a moment because we work on the cover first. So I'm first going to do the holes for the elastic. And this is a bit wider spine than I generally have, so let's see how we go. Sometimes they turn out a bit different than others, so I think that will be about central. Yep. Alright, so we start off by drawing a hole. I use my big bite, I'm very lucky to have one of those. And I'm just going to do the hole at the top there with the 3/16 hole punch. And then I'll do the other one, the other end, and hopefully get that one right as well. Just try and make sure they're as central as possible. Okay. So I sometimes have to, I can put the big bite away for a second, sometimes have to trim these where the hole came, because sometimes it doesn't clear all the fabric out of the way, so I just trim off the fabric that didn't quite get cut out. And now we're going to put in the eyelets. Now the eyelets that I have here, I like the ones that have got a fairly long shank on them, if you can see those. They don't have the little splits on them, and I've tried putting them in the conventional way and they don't quite work as well, but I think I need that length of the shank. So really there's a little bit of trial and error with this, I'm sorry to say. So let's just go back out a bit so we can see the big picture. And so generally speaking, I put them with the, oh yeah, I might be alright, put them somehow like this and just bring that up so we're using the eyelet setter, and make sure we're lining that up properly in the hole. So you want the up the top of the big bite, or your crocodile, whatever you're going to use. You've got a little bar that comes down, and it needs to go right into that eyelet. And then you get, no, that one didn't turn out quite as perfectly as they generally do. I have changed one of the settings because I watched a DVD on using these things the other day, and it's a little bit different, so I'm just going to change it back to what I had before. So just bear with me 1 second, it's not that difficult. There's actually two, let's see if I can show you on the side, there's actually 2 different settings in there. One of them is a big thick bar that comes down, and the other one's a little narrow one, and I had the little narrow one before and I think it worked better, even though the tutorial I was watching said to use the bigger one. I found I had a better result with the small one, so you might have to experiment a little bit with that. I'm sorry that it's not an exact science. So now I've got another one of those eyelets with the big shank on them. Let's try this end that hasn't, oh, I'd already set one in there, had I? Oh goodness, sorry, bit of a blundering happening here. So let's do it this way now and see how we go. So I've just got the little hole coming down this time. Let's see if that works a bit better. And it did the same thing, where it's not really quite as smooth as they normally work out. It could be the fault of the eyelet, but it still will work, it just doesn't look as neat as it generally does. We have finished with the big bite now, so let's put it aside. So having done my holes top and bottom, I'm ready to put through the elastic. I do this now because I will be using this to help line up the other 2 holes that I'm going to sew in. So I like the elastic to already be in place. So bring that around and tie it. You want it fairly tight because you don't want that loose insert that's held in with the elastic to be floppy and falling about. So you want it fairly tight. Sometimes I tie it and then it's not tight enough when I get to the end bit, but hat elastic's not that expensive, so if necessary I just do another one. So I do 3 knots, and I do 3 one way, and then I go back and come on the other direction, just to give it a bit of stability, and then just cut that off there. So we'll see how that works out. I might have to untie it and retie it, or replace the whole thing if it didn't work. So that's got our midori-style elastic in the middle. You can see that there. It's not too bad as far as its position and its straightness, so I'm pretty happy with that. So now we're going to do the other ones. Now, some people have mentioned that they use the smaller hole on the big bite to make the holes for the signatures to come out. And I don't tend to do that unless I am doing all of the holes that way. I've got a journal that I did that style. And here I've used the big bite to make the holes and set the holes. There's only 2 signatures in this one, and so I have then used them to do it. But I don't generally. I prefer to just make the holes the conventional way with my awl, which is what I'm going to show you today. But if you preferred that, you could obviously do that on and have, you know, your holes for your elastic up the top with that on either side of it. But it's not what I generally do, so I'll show you what my system is. So now I'm going to make the holes in the cover to sew, and I've got another template here, which just makes it a bit easier. Instead of having to you know, measure every single time, I've got my little system. It's amazing how often you have to sort of adjust what you're doing because there's some variation to normal, and this time the spine is just that little bit wider than normal. But what I do first is I get my awl and I just go through that centre hole and see how that looks as you know, in relation to where that elastic is underneath. You can see I'm peering underneath, and it needs to come just a fraction this way. So let's see, because I want, when I put this through the hole and have a look, I want it to be just the other side of the elastic, not too far off. All right, now to make my holes in the book cover, I put my mouse pad underneath. It's not probably particularly very good for it, but that's what I do anyway. So, and now I'm just going to make a smallish kind of hole on both 3 positions, but only the outside 2. I'm not putting one in the middle because the elastic is there. I've only made shallow holes at the moment because I like to see where they're placed before I bore a great hole in it. And I can't even see them. Oh yes, there they are. So there we go, we've got one there. I'm happy with those, so I now make a bigger hole. So now the holes are set in the cover. I'll put that aside for a moment and get my signatures. So I've chosen that these signatures will be the 2 at the front and back. No, sorry. Where's that page gone? Oh, they're the 2 at the front and back. And this one's the one that's going to be in the middle. And the reason is just some of the inserts are a little bit different, and I like to break it up. If there's something that's a bit different than the other 2, it will be the middle one. So I'll put that aside because I'm going to sew these 2 in. And I think I like this one best as the first one, and that is the last. So I'm going to do it actually first. So I don't need my mouse pad anymore. I use that only for the cover. So the first thing I'm going to do is just do a flick through, and 1, I'm making sure everything is up the right way, and 2, I'm making sure that I'm happy with where these papers are sitting in respect of being sort of central to the book. You know, if I wanted them up there like that, you know, I'd move them around at the moment, or if I wanted them offset, I'd move them. But I'm happy with that, with them both kind of like sort of central. So I'm looking for the pages being up the right way and the things being in a good position. And this one, I might just move that more to the middle, and there's the centre one there, but it's upside down. How about that? probably did that when I put the lace on. So that one's the right way now. And I might even change. No, that looks all right. All right, so that one's now ready. And this is going to be our third signature. So what I do now, I'm happy with that, is I bring over my cradle, which is one of my new purchases, which I'm so happy with. It just makes this so much more accurate when you're doing this. I'm actually going to do it upside down though, because there is a page in there that's going to be higher than the rest of them, and I want it to be at the top, not the bottom. I think it'll look good with that coming out the top of the rest of the pages. Maybe not that much though. Having said that. So I'm going to do it like that. But I have missed a step. Excuse me 1 second. After I check all the pages are the same, I go to the middle and I measure where I'm going to do my holes and mark it with a pen. So I'm only measuring the middle page. I'm not measuring the outer. So try and get whichever you do, you need to make sure you're consistent with the signatures that you're sewing in, so that they aren't, you know, higgledy-piggledy, one high, one low. So my middle signature is actually 7 inches, 7.5 inches, let's say 7.5 will do. And then so going from the bottom, I'm going to do 3 and I'm going to do 3/10 there. Remembering if we go a bit lower it will be better because we've got that extra page coming up. So I'm going to go 3 and 3/10, which is on my marking there. And then I'm going to move my ruler so that it's on a inch mark. So I've moved it to the 4. So I'm doing another hole at 2 and another one at 6. And you can see that that's quite a bit different. I might have to double check my... Yeah, sorry, I have made a mistake there. That's a bit of a mess, but never mind. I'll try again because I needed it to be 3.5 plus a couple. So it's the first hole is in the wrong spot. It's too low. So that's going to confuse me a bit. I don't normally have this problem, but you know what happens when you're doing a video. So I've just got to remember that I want the higher hole, not the bottom one. So that's where I'm going to do my holes. You won't see those holes that are wrong in the end, I don't believe. So now put it back into the cradle where I had it before. Get the pages arranged lengthways, how I want them to be. And then I just use my ruler to make sure it's really nested down in there, and put on a couple of bulldog clips to grip the pages and keep them in that position. So I'm just gripping those now, so that is going to be nice and steady of where I want the holes to be to line them all up. And sorry, discombobulated. So now I'm using the upper level of the holes to actually pierce my hole through the signature. I hope I'll do the next one a little bit more accurately than this one, so you get a better example of how I do these. So now we need the needle, which I've already got threaded with some wax thread. And I measure this so that it's 3 lengths of the journal. That gives you plenty of room and a bit to trim off at the end. So now this is going to be the last signature, so I want to sew it into the back of the book, not the front. So here's the cover. It's got the holes in it, and I've made the holes in the center of that last signature. So I go through the middle of the signature and then making sure I'm still upright and using the back hole, go through the middle and then come up to the top and go back in. Now another thing that I do here is I often will put a little bulldog clip on this end of my string so I can't accidentally pull it right through and have to start again. So now I need the hole at the back up the top, and it's a little hard to see. So what I'm going to do is use my pokey tool to go through there, and that shows me where the hole is, and I can just pull out the pokey tool and as I do so, I will see where the hole is to follow with the needle. I haven't got enough hands at the minute, and there it is. So that's a little trick. Some of the fabrics, depending on the pattern, can be quite hard to see where your hole is. So there we go. And now we're going through the top hole in the signature, and then down to the bottom hole, and then through there and through the cover again. Just got to see where the holes are. Usually I can see them a little bit better than this. I think I'm having a very off day. So now let's caught on something. Yeah. Just the tail needs to be released. Right, so now we've gone, we went through the middle and out through the cover, and then up to the top and in, and then down to the bottom and out. And now we're going in again. We're going back into the same hole that we first came out of, trying to make sure we don't split the cotton as we do it, because there's already a string coming out of there. Cotton, whatever you call it. So we go through, I always go through them separately. So here we are, I'm through the cover. And now I'm going to go through the signature, back through that same hole. And I want to come up on the other side of the string. So there's one on either side. At the moment it's quite loose. I keep it loose till I'm happy with it, so that you can adjust it if you need to. So there we go, we've sewn in our back signature, and we will now make sure it's all good before we tighten it off. I like to make sure there's no, see there's a bubble of cotton there, so we make sure we pull that tighter. So and we also check the outside that we don't have any bubbles of cotton, which we do not. So I'm pretty happy with that, so I'll tie it off. So say one piece of strings on either side of that centre, so when you tie, you're trapping the string that runs down the middle in between the two pieces of cotton. So again, I tie it 3 times, 2 one way and then 1 opposite way. Oops. And then I usually just cut them off about the length of the book. I don't really want long daggy tails hanging even now. So there we go, that's the first one done, that's the back signature, and we can now release those clips. I'll thread up my needle ready for the next one. Well, that's got a knot in the end of it, won't help. I'm hoping this video will at least be good enough to put up to show you what I do, even though I've made a few little blunder along kind of things. As I say, even when you do this many, many times, it'll surprise you when just suddenly, when you've been doing it perfectly, suddenly it just goes pear-shaped and you end up with something to just do an adjustment to. So now we've got the one that's going to be our first signature, and we'll do the same thing. I flick through to make sure it's all up the right way. Yes. And that we're happy where the pages are. A little trick, if pages are very flimsy and tend to be moving around on you, you can just tape them down very lightly with a little bit of washi tape to hold them in place. But, personally, I don't really mind if they're not exactly all in the same spot. If one moves up and one moves down and you have a little bit of off-centerishness, it doesn't really matter. It's still all just part of the charm of the junk journal. And that looks pretty good. So this time I'll try to do this measurement thing a bit more correctly for you. So I've got to just move that page that's bigger. I don't normally have a page that's bigger, so that's part of the problem, that I've done some things slightly different than usual, and that's part of the problem of having these issues, because they're not standard. So I've decided that I want it to be 3.5, then a couple, so I'm going there for my middle one. So I need it to be not on an inch mark because it's the centre. But then I move it to an inch mark so that I can mark the other one. So I go 2, 4, 6, and that's where the holes are going to be. So that looks a little bit more of a professional job this time. I hope it works out for me. So now I get my cradle back and put my journal in there, my signature in there. Make sure it's nested down the middle, and then I'm happy with the papers in their arrangement that way. And now I'll get my little pokey tool, and after I put the clips on naturally to hold it steady and keep it in that position. It helps immensely. I used to use a phone book, and I would put the signature into the valley of the phone book, and that would give you some sort of, that would keep it reasonably nice. But since I bought this cradle from Which Craft Do You Do, I'm really happy because it's not quite the struggle to keep the signatures together as it used to be. So it was well worth the $22 that I paid for it. And so there you go, I've got my 3 holes in, and now I can put aside the pokey tool and the cradle, get my cover back and my needle, which I've already got threaded, and again I'm going right through the middle of this signature and making sure I'm working upright and go through the middle hole of the cover. Then remembering to tie off once I pull it through a little. Sometimes I used to take them up here and clip them under that, but sometimes I found I moved them when I released that clip, so I just put another one there. That works good. So now I want to go up to the top and go in through that hole. And we'll see if I can find it without using the pokey tool to show me where the hole is. And yes, that was perfect. And then through the signature and out the top. Sometimes when you go to put that through the holes, if the book has moved, if the signature's moved a bit, if the pages have shifted, you'll find that it doesn't go through as cleanly and clearly as that. And that's probably the greatest thing about the cradle, because it does mean that your pages are lined up properly and stay in that position, particularly with the bulldog clips to keep them there, of course. But yeah, it certainly makes it easier and a little bit less of a struggle to get those signatures to stay in place and line up properly. And there you go. How perfectly beautiful is that? It just comes straight through in the right position. Bring that through. Oh no, I think I might have a mark with it. And I finish with the needle now. I finish with that clip, and I finish with those clips. And I'm just going to make sure this is nice and tight and straight before I tie off. And just again check that I don't have any bubbles of cotton. There's that signature end there. No, that looks pretty good. It's nice and tight without pulling it so tight that it tears the paper naturally. It's quite of a, do it firm but not so tight that it'll tear your paper. And then go back the other way for the 3rd knot. Now sometimes people put hearts on a string on these strings, sometimes they just tie them into bows. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with them yet, but I'll just leave them like that for the moment. So then the next thing that's left to do only is to put the 3rd signature, the middle signature that is. That's not the one that was supposed to be, but never mind, I've messed it up slightly in my order. But it doesn't really matter, that one can go in there. And oh yeah, that's not too bad. So signature 1, signature 2, signature 3. I've got a bit of work to do on pockets, and I've got to find an image for the back cover. And yeah, so but apart from that, that's pretty much looking pretty good. I hope that this tutorial is of some value to you. Just so you can see how that I sew in my hybrid journals. I sometimes do a bit more of the embellishing inside of it beforehand, but in this case I didn't. So there you go. There's your Midori in the middle and your sewn signatures either side. Thank you so much for watching.